Barbados Labour Party supporters in New York are having meetings with the new leader of that party, Mia Mottley. And Ms. Mottley is my guest on Brooklyn 45. Welcome to Brooklyn 45.
Thank you very much, Sam. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Well, again, last time you were here, you were deputy leader of the opposition.
No, I was just member of parliament at that time.
Really?
Yes,
my memory is failing? You were just a member of parliament?
Yeah, just member of parliament, an ordinary member.
Okay. Yes. Now you are no ordinary member of parliament.
Well, I'm one who is among the others given the responsibility of helping to chart the direction.
Okay, well, let's talk about that direction that you want to change.
Well, I think that Barbados is going through, as with the rest of the Caribbean, some very unique challenges at this point in time. And in a sense, we want to be able to make fundamental changes. I said to the party, we just had our 75th anniversary, that it's not important that we only be the alternative, because we will naturally be the alternative. But as a party, we must strive to be the answer, because there are some fundamental development challenges that we all face, in particular in Barbados. And in a sense, we have been a victim of our own progress. There's been a culture of contentment, and the world continues to move apace around us. So if we're going to make it different, we're going to have to dig very deeply and rise to the challenges of making some fundamental changes.
It's perhaps a little difficult being in opposition to talk about changes that you really would like to see. Mm-hmm. Forgive me if I'm wrong.
That's true.
But what are some of those changes that you can talk about?
Well, I think that one of the things that we have as a generation to recognize the post-independence generation is that when we talk about productivity or when we talk about competitiveness, that fundamentally we're also talking about issues that are really about the cultural development that we have and a sense of identity and self-esteem that we have as individuals, because our productivity is the sum total of each individual. And if people feel themselves not up to the mark, or if there's still a sense of inferiority as a result of the consequences of colonialism, the consequences of racism, the consequences of gender separation or class separation, then all of those things go to affect the total output and creation of wealth. And in a sense, that's what Bob Marley was talking about when he said, use the words of Marcus Garvey and said, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. Now, this may seem high and esoteric, but there's a direct link back to the quality of output from our individual states when you recognize that each household and each individual is what contributes to that total output. We've got to feel better about ourselves, and we've got to feel that we are up to the task. And it's no different from what President Obama tried to do in terms of stimulating people here to believe that, yes, they can. But it's in our case, it's not only yes, we can, but yes, we must.
You talked earlier about the Caribbean and the fact that the Caribbean is going through so many economic challenges. What is so different about what is happening generally in the Caribbean and what is happening in Barbados?
Well, I think in Barbados there's a general feeling that we could do a lot more with what we have. That there's no doubt that there's a challenging world, a challenging region, but there's certain fundamental decisions that have not been taken. We have three particular problems in Barbados. We have, that are economic, and then there are the problems. But we have a growth problem. Our economy has not grown now for 5 years properly. We have a debt problem. Our debt has mushroomed to the point where we are one of the most highly indebted countries in the world, and not just in the Caribbean. And we have a deficit problem. Barbados since 1955 would only have run a current account fiscal deficit. In other words, be unable to pay its bills monthly, salaries, goods and services, etc. We had only done that up until this year 11 times. 1962, 1977, 1974, 1989, 1991. And regrettably, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013. So that the last 6 years have taken something that is really an aberration in our system of governance, in our economic management, and it has now made it the norm. And that is what is of great concern, because as you know, Barbadians tend to be very prudent, very thrifty. But when you have a government that is effectively spending more than it earns, and doing so as a matter of course every year, we are into developing some deep-seated problems.
You talked about aberration and norm.
Mm-hmm.
Barbados has always prided itself as being, or as perhaps having the strongest economy in the Caribbean.
One of the most balanced economies in terms of growth. We never had the highest growth and we never had the lowest, but we were steady as you go. And regrettably, that steadiness isn't there.
And what is your fear in terms of looking forward to the next? You're going to be in opposition for how many more years?
Well, we've just had an election,
Yes.
but as you know, in our system, you can call an election at any time with 3 weeks' notice. But the government does have 5 years, technically under the Constitution.
What is your immediate and long-term fear, therefore?
Well, literally, that our state of affairs literally causes households and enterprises to collapse. We've already started to see it happen. There are a number of layoffs. There are businesses that you would have known all your life, Sam. Today's headlines is the closing of the Costa Manning. Cave Shepherd has announced massive restructuring. Major construction companies are doing the same. And this is on top of 16,000 jobs lost in the private sector in the last 2 to 3 years as well. There's also the phenomenon of underemployment, where people are being put on 2 and 3 days, particularly in the hotel sector. You have 50 small hotels in the intimate hotels group that are really suffering. Then you have the largest hotel chain in Barbados closing over a year ago, and there has literally been no replacement for Almond Beach Village. Barbados's performance in tourism is literally at the bottom of the Caribbean, according to the CTO for the year. And our tourism performance and revenue is below what it was in 2007. So that those things cause you to pause and say enough is enough. Now, we have given the government, in fact, today is 100 days since the election, and I think that it was only fair, since a new mandate, that you give them the space to get themselves together, because an election is disruptive in any country. But I fear that they have not used the time. We also feel strongly that there were certain things that the public expects us to have a national approach on. Regrettably, the government has rejected that olive branch. But we will continue focused on the task at hand, because building Barbados is not going to be about being tribalist. And that's one of the reasons why I'm in New York, because we're going to need Barbadians of goodwill anywhere in the world. Barbadians by birth, Barbadians by descent, Barbadians by choice. Because building back the country and stabilizing the country cannot be the preserve of just a limited few.
I want to talk about your being in New York, but first let's get back to the statement you made just now about the olive branch. What is that olive branch, or was that olive branch?
Well, we essentially feel that there ought to be cooperation on the general direction that the country takes. And in fact, I did it the previous time I was leading. The former Prime Minister Arthur did it up to last year, and I've done it again. And you see, one of the difficulties of the Westminster system, and let me say that the majorities in Parliament are now very razor thin. Well, they have 16, we have 14. But one of the difficulties of the Westminster-based system is that it is very adversarial, except that being adversarial is not going to take the country out of its difficulties, and we've recognized that. I don't believe that to win the next election, I have to drive this government and, by extension, the country into the ground, because at the end of the day, we will be taking over a situation that would be far worse than we would have to otherwise. I feel I can still win the election by inspiring a population to a higher purpose and a better life. And therefore, if we can do a problem to stem the hemorrhaging, we are prepared to do it.
That 100 days ago,
Yes.
you thought you would have won the election.
I think it was recognized it was going to be very close. I mean, there was going to be no landslide for either party. But yes, I think we thought we could have won.
What immediate reorganization did you do, or are you still planning?
Well, we're in the process
certainly
of,
you've got
that's right.
4 years, 5 years.
That's right. I mean,
but as you said, an election can be called at any time.
That's right. And given the circumstances, there's a very heightened political environment still for a post-election environment. We are planning. One of the things that I've vowed to myself is that, you know, after 20 years in public life, it is easy to have conceived notions from your experiences. And I said, look, wipe out the hard drive, erase. Let's go back to basics and let's go out there to the people. And as a result, we've started a program called Rubbing Shoulders, so that every Thursday, or most Thursdays, we're going out there to the people. We started with the sugar workers in the fields. We started with their management. We then went to the small hotels, and we're literally going to every area of economic and social activity, taking a journey across Barbados, so to speak, or where Barbadians are. And this weekend is no different in terms of rubbing shoulders. So learning again. understanding people's concerns, understanding people's needs, understanding people's aspirations, understanding people's fears.
So let's talk about your trip here to New York and
Yes.
the meetings that you're going to have and the purpose of these meetings.
Well, as I said before, I think that you can't build out a nation without looking to bring together all who are prepared to help you do so of goodwill. And the Barbadian population in the United States of America, but particularly in New York and the Eastern Seaboard, is large. I don't need to tell you that. And I've said a couple of years ago that we will continue to treat to you, and we will do this not only in opposition but in government, because your goodwill, you're concerned about your families, you're concerned about their welfare and well-being, you're concerned about your investments, the land you have home, the money you have in the credit unions. All of those things are in people's minds. But equally, you have skills. And at the end of the day, a population of 270,000 always needs the additional skills to build out the country. And we want to have that relationship of trust, and it takes time to build a relationship of trust. So this is part of that continuum, rubbing shoulders, meeting new people, understanding what the dreams and aspirations and fears are of people up here, just as we're seeking to do at home.
What are you going to be telling them?
We're going to tell them that we're going to need them. And Barbados is at this point in its journey as an independent country at a very, very difficult time. And if ever we needed all Barbadians of goodwill, it is now. But we don't only need them, we also need their voices to be heard. We need them to articulate what they feel. And we need that in the context not only of the diaspora here, but technology has made it possible for them to do so at home. The only difference is when you're here, Sam, is that you can't drive in the car and come to my house tonight. But everything else, we can talk. You know what I'm eating today. You know where my meetings are. You can see me.
I can see you,
see
of
the
course.
people around me.
Yes.
So that's what technology has done for us. And it's almost made the notion of diaspora an obsolete concept.
The Barbados Labour Party have now put their future in your hands.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
I feel privileged but honored and humbled. I'm cognizant that Barbados has had a style and a way of doing things that has come out of the 60s. It's done well for us, but I'm not so sure that it can continue to do well for us. And I hope and pray every day that by being able to harness the creativity and being able to harness the determination of Barbadians, that we can have a better output and a better outpouring. I really am not a tribalist, and that's the irony. But we've had a political system that, as you know, has been very adversarial. I feel that my duty is to be able to bring out the best in all Barbadians and to create the opportunities, open the windows to the nation, as the old people would tell you, to open the windows to the house, to air the house. There are people who want opportunity. And I feel that if we can get the best and create the platforms, excuse me, for us to be able to reach the rest of the world, then our people can, in fact, do great things.
Leader of the opposition in Barbados, Mia Mottley, leader of the Barbados Labour Party, the oldest political party in Barbados, and indeed in many parts of the Caribbean. Great to see you in New York, and thank you very much for joining us here on Brooklyn 45.